are on a mission to give you the truth, only the truth, and nothing but the truth. Please like this program so it can reach far and wide. Today is Monday, October the 18th, and here are the main points. In global news, the United States and Canadian warships sailed through Taiwan Strait last week, and the American military has confirmed this on Sunday. This begs the question what the deterrent procedures are. China condemns both US and Canada in strong terms, and Chinese media, the Global Times, threatens US with a nuclear attack with ICBMs if it tries to defend Taiwan. Taiwan seeks early delivery of 66 F-16-V fighter jets while also hoping to procure more than 100 AGM-158 long-range missiles capable of hitting China. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir. Your thoughts on this US-Canada exercise in and around Taiwan?
Namaskar, good morning to everybody in the United States and good evening to everybody in India. For some very fascinating reasons, both myself and Sree are in different locations in India and reporting on the same time zone, which seldom happens. We are always on two different time zones. To echo Sreeji's sentiments, we look forward to your continued support for this program and continued patronage to PGurus, and only your support can help to monetize and keep the channel and other kinds of activities going. To start off, as is often the case, China is, you can see that there is no rhetoric, there's no stopping of the rhetoric from China. It's glad to see that Canadians and the Chinese and the United States had their ships making their voyage across the strait. And needless to say, China has condemned both the countries, and the Chinese mouthpiece has neither spared an inch and made castigating remarks around what China is capable of, including the rhetoric of intercontinental ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads being targeted against United States. And Taiwan says, go for it, and then it is continuing to arm itself with the F-16 advanced fighter jets, plus the advanced tactical weapons that it can use to launch into China. So, in other words, both the countries, as they, lift the rhetoric, both the countries are fairly well prepared. I think Vladimir Putin, we covered this yesterday, was right in saying China may be upping the ante, but it may not use the war as a mechanism, but it may use other means by which it may try to get around taking over Taiwan. There's no doubt that Xi Jinping, in his pursuit under his leadership, wants to integrate this one China policy of, he's got Hong Kong, he's only Taiwan is left, and then all the other skirmishes that is happening around the world. What is there a deterrence? Is the question that we are posed to answer. At the moment, we have a weakened leadership in United States, and Japan is in transition. These are the two pivotal nations which can lead any assault or any deterrence in terms of whatever China tries to do. Both these countries are in different phases of, this is not Fiji, this is not Shinzo Abe at helm, this is not President Trump, Mike Pompeo at helm, but these are very different regimes which are in different phases of evolution. So it begs the question how the world is going to respond.
The intelligence chief of United States, Avril Haines, is to meet with her counterparts in South Korea and Japan later this week to discuss North Korea and other matters. Sridharji, Avril Haines is, I think, the first woman to occupy this job. And so far, she has been under the radar. We haven't really heard or seen anything from her. Now, this intelligence sharing and so on and so forth, I mean, for all practical purposes, North Korea is like a subsidiary or a satellite of China, is it not? Should we expect something radical or something dramatic to emerge out of this?
No, I don't believe so. I think that as we again, go back, the U.S. is in a very weak position by way of leadership. The secret forays may be more about trying to unite Japan and Korea so that they have this trilateral partnership. The cosmetic or the curation that is being given is North Korea. I don't believe that North Korea can be contained by any of the secret forays that is going on between United States and Japan and South Korea. Remember, we again covered in Daily Global Insights. North Korea had reached out to South Korea for direct dialogue and normalization, with Moon Jae had accepted as a good way to move things forward. So, whatever these discussions are, we will never probably come to know unless there is a media leakage. But as you rightly said, Sriji, we don't expect much to come out of it.
And the murder of conservative member of parliament, Sir David Amis, his suspected killer, named Al Harbi Ali. His father worked for the Somali government, according to reports. The French Prime Minister Macron paying tributes to the slain teacher and says that France will defend its core values. Sridharji, now France has sort of waken up to the threat that radical Islam poses. When do you think the Conservative Party led United Kingdom is going to crack the whip? In fact, they have 8 to 9% of their population which is Islamic.
Based on, I think again we talked about this, Sriji, that I don't see anything tangible coming from Britain. They just are responding knee jerk. They seem to have gone soft, and you can see. I mean, this was most frontal attack. When a sitting conservative MP who is going to the church being attacked, and then all you do is have a very soft approachment, and you are trickle feeding the news in terms of the specifics. The cause is unknown, at least the person is known. Then you're reporting that the father of the person who works for the Somali government is traumatized. Imagine what the consequences are to the family of the slain leader, plus, of course, the general morale of the people. So I think we are not seeing anything tangibly within the context of what is to come from the Conservative Party. The only country in the only I mean sorry two blocks, France in the Western Europe, certainly the Eastern Europeans have woken up to it, and they've been acting as a deterrence right up front. But France is the only country which can probably lead under Macron leadership, the transformation that is much needed for the integration of the people, rather than they becoming really problematic for the general disposition of the activities in each of these countries.
And Sridharji, one must tip one's hat to Macron because he was one of the youngest prime ministers ever to have descended on France. And people are thinking that he's going to be, putting out the liberal spiel and so on and so forth. But he really quickly grasped the gravity of the situation and taken the bull by the horn. So we should appreciate the man's dare and guts, because it is what is needed, and Europe needs to set its ship straight. And let's hope that the other Western European countries take their cue from France and follow suit. That's all we can hope for, sir. And in other news, I'm sorry, you wanted to say something, sir?
No, I just acknowledge him, just saying that's absolutely correct.
And Russian gas demand is at a record level and is yet to prepare, and it's not yet prepared to meet the EU demand should such a request be forthcoming, stated Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak. Sridharji, the Nordstrom, is it Nordstrom or something like that, pipeline that was supposed to connect Russia directly to Germany to help solve the problems of the Western European as well as perhaps Eastern European gas needs for heating as winter comes in. Um, Is that pipe switched on now, or it's not yet done? Is there some bargaining going on? Can you kind of give us a little bit of perspective on this as to why this new statement is emerging from Russia, sir?
It switched on to come into Germany. If you recall, that was one of the deals that was signed off by President Biden while he decided to cut supplies in United States. He allowed that to go on, saying that there are unique demands. There's one other nation, I think if I'm correct, it's Hungary, which has also turned on, causing alarm bells in Ukraine as to why it has been done. Hungary very clearly pointed out that, hey, we have a problem. We need to heat the homes. So I think the what is going to happen is that there is no alternative. So therefore, by and large, Europe is suffering from an energy crisis, escalating crisis because of the sudden dip in the supply of the crude. And then you also have a huge demand for gas, and there's no alternate. So you're going to see Russia winning this. It's not Russia winning this. Russia being at the centerpiece of meeting the needs of the Europe, and then the rhetoric around all this confrontation disappear. So I don't know how many countries. I mean, Britain has got a problem. Most of Europe has got a problem. Eastern Europe has got a problem. Either they're going to do individual deals with Russia, or they are going to do a collective deal. That seems to be the way that this is heading, Sriji.
And I'm hearing some really bad stories that last winter, many a days in a week, let's say of 7 days, the heating hot water, which is used for shower and all that stuff, was only available 2 days a week. So this becomes a real problem, especially for some who are used to showering every day. Anyway, that was just something that I heard, and I thought I should pass it on. So there is a real challenge now in terms of how much is the consumption of natural gas and who's turning the spigot on and off. Moving on, Blinken and Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan discussed Iran's nuclear program and other areas of common interest. The Saudi minister informs Mr. Blinken that the discussions with Iran on their nuclear program, he would like to, sort of be in the loop. I don't know. One is a Sunni country and the other one is a Shia country. How do you think Blinken and the Biden administration is going to balance the two?
It's more chaos than less. If you recall, the Saudis and the Iranians met in that Middle East summit called by Iraq in Baghdad. Remember, France attended it, and it had some repercussions from other countries to say, how can France attend with Iran at the table? It seems like that meeting went well. The Saudi foreign minister says the conversations with Iran was cordial, and they seem to be accommodative, but their concern was more around sanctions. And if that's the message that the Saudi foreign minister is giving to his friend, Mr. Antony Blinken, as he says, that only adds more chaos to the confusion in terms of how all these different interacting parties make any conclusive pointer to the resolution of the 2015 nuclear accord. Make sure that Iran is not developing a nuclear weapon and Iran behaves. But what is happening on ground is exactly the opposite. And all these statements that are coming out seems to be more press releases of diplomatic nature rather than anything constructive towards solving a problem.
And Turkey's Erdogan says that the US proposed F-16 sales in return for Turkey investment in F-35 program. This was subsequently cancelled after the purchase of S-400 by Turkey. So right now, Turkey is in one of those situations where I think they still have a fair amount of missiles that can have nuclear warheads put on them. Isn't it true, Sridharji?
They have, and they also are now the manufacturers of Bakayar drones, unmanned aerial vehicles. They can be what you call armed or unarmed vehicles. So they are supplying them with generosity to nations around. So even don't be surprised. I mean, I've said this before, contrary to many pundits in the program, that if Turkey makes a proposal to Biden to say, look, we have to take on Taliban and we have to be a deterrent and we have to be with you on Iran, then they'll say, okay, fine, you can have it, and we accept. We won't give you F-35 because that would contradict. That would basically reveal our strategic capabilities to the Russians with S-400 under your armory. So this is the reason why I feel that if you recall that, again, I keep mentioning this because nobody mentions this. It was only mentioned by one diplomat, diplomat from South Korea who was being briefed or who was being questioned for nomination for Israel. He made the statement: the U.S. has a policy called no bans, no sanctions, and no attacks or no threats. So therefore, when you have no bans, no sanctions, and no war, how are you going to make anything enforceable? So therefore, Turkey will make a persuasive case. Remember, Turkey has got a fantastic, huge building that they're occupying right opposite the United Nations. They have a very strong footprint now in New York and with that into Washington, D.C. So it's not unfathomable to think that the sanctions will go underway, except they may not get F-35s, but they'll get more F-16s. So they're going to be, as you asked the question, they may be, armed with anything that you can contemplate.
And United Arab Emirates Energy Minister Al Mazroui said that Gulf states continue to invest in energy sector to meet global demands and to stabilize markets. As these statements are coming out, we continue to see the price of crude go up ever so slowly. Sridharji, there was a point, I think, in the 1960s and 70s. They said by 1991, all the wells in the Middle East will run dry. However, that did not happen. Now we are 30 years later, continuing to pump crude out of all these oil fields. Give us a bit of a small perspective on how long crude is going to be coming out of these wells in Middle East, and when do you think the world is going to change in a different way, like go green?
Well, first and foremost, on all these predictions around oil wells running dry and they're running out of gas, it's all purely built on mathematical models, so therefore, I think that whether they're going to run out in next 10 years or whether they're going to take another 100 years to run out, time will tell. But clearly, the oil is not dissipating in UAE. That oil is not dissipating in Saudi. The oil is not dissipating in Kuwait. There is still untapped resources in both in the south and northern Iraq. There is also tapping going on in just of Israel. So therefore, there's plenty of opportunity for extracting. These small nations, they don't need to comply because they're only supplying to the gas guzzlers of the world. So they're in that context, they are, EPA compliant or climate accord compliant. I think the more strategic question is that they have extracted oil and sold at prices that accommodated the Western needs. Then they embarked, because all these things require maintenance and expansion and recreation of the infrastructure. Most of the creaking infrastructure was redeveloped with huge amount of capital deployed, which naturally drove the unit cost of prices up by a significant amount of money, because there's an amortization effect. Today, the cost of what you call as the break-even point for energy in Saudi Arabia is nowhere near what it was in 1960s or 70s. The costs have quadrupled. But having said that, this is the consequence of the pricing that you are beginning to see across the world. Now, in terms of the wealth, you have seen that Saudi's reserves have depleted quite significantly. It's around 365 or 370 billion dollars. Once it was 600 billion dollars. That's a reflection of the lowering of the revenue when the unit cost of the barrel has gone up. So that's the issue that some of these countries are facing in terms of the economics. As far as the drying is concerned, I think we are some distance away. but they have sunk huge amount of money on retooling their entire infrastructure.
In Sudan, pro-army protesters rally again, stage sit-in near the presidential palace. The Congo protests turned violent as lawmakers select electoral commission chief. So Sahel region continues to sizzle. I guess. Let's take a quick look at United States news, Sridharji. Who is running United States? President Biden or President Obama or both? Fox Analysis reports that Obama is very much engaged on all matters in guiding Biden and will also be attending the climate summit. Let me set the stage here for this. You already have a climate czar, John Kelly. Then you have the president. Then there are portions where Vice President Kamala Harris is also involved, and now they are roping in Barack Obama, President Barack Obama. Sir, I have too many cooks spoil the broth is the phrase that comes to mind. How do you see this, Sridharji?
Well, I think we have been asking this question: who is running United States? I think that slowly the cat is coming out of the bag. So broadly, on many issues, you can see the hand of Obama. And in fact, what he had said before, it is my unfinished business of my second term that Biden is completing. Why is then Mr. Obama going to the climate summit? Because Mr. Kelly tried to win elections. He was considered as a waffler. He was not considered as a forthright leader. So therefore, you require somebody with the oratory as well as the leadership skills to get this climate agenda back on track. The Paris Accord, the architect of Paris Accord was Mr. Obama with some of the European nations. So who better than him? If somebody thinks Kamala Harris can give lectures to Mr. Modi on democracy, and somebody thinks that she can go to the border and solve the border crisis, and somebody thinks who can go to Haiti and solve the Haitian crisis, and go to Central America and solve the influx of refugees, and then go across to Europe and solve the climate accord, then they must be, thinking something other than normalcy. Because the reason is that she is not capable of any of these things. She is not an experienced politician. She comes from a prosecution background. She was an attorney general. So therefore, you have very interesting personalities in this, and therefore, this is the last piece of his thing that is still left standing, which is climate accord. So he is sending Mr. Obama.
And Robert Gates, the former defense secretary, claims that President Biden was wrong on just about every major foreign policy initiative and national security decision in the past 4 decades. So Robert Gates is actually pulling up the record of President Biden as a senator, because he's been a senator for 41 or so years, sir. Um,
Yep.
so if this is the truth, then why did the Republicans not bring it up at election time to point out that this man has been frequently wrong?
Okay, sir, one more time. Read the book written by Sree Iyer. Read the book for the answer written by Sree Iyer. So policies did not win. Politics did not win. Something else won 2020 elections. So that you will read in the book.
And absolutely. And then look at the margin, sir. There were 20 million votes discovered from somewhere. So it's just an incredible election. October 2020 was an event where, when we'll look at this 2020-2021 period, 10 years down the road, and say that the world ran at super fast speed for those 2 years, because there's so much that happened. It was just incredible. It was a blur, and only now things are beginning to settle down. But yet, many people are still going at that high speed, and frequent mistakes, flip flops, reversals, and that's what we are seeing play out. Now let's move on. White House continues to push the debunked zero cost claim on Biden's economic agenda. Now, yesterday we mentioned that the settlement of the number infrastructure could be from 3.5 trillion. Everybody might agree at around 1.5 trillion. I think that's what I'm also seeing as the news comes out. Sridharji, what is your take on where that number is going to be? And it is absolutely important that the United States have improved infrastructure. However, that should not be on the backs of taxing people who are contributing to the economy. And already US is becoming the world's biggest welfare state, the way the money is being doled out, sir.
Indeed, I think we have to go back to the advice given by James Carville. James Carville, who ran
He's a
campaigns,
Democrat.
he is a Democrat, advised for Bill Clinton, gave the following advice: Democrats, you are stupid. Democrats, Mr. Biden, you're going to hurt yourself because you are trying to chew more than what you can bite. Achieve small portions of what you want to accomplish. Go to 2022 and 24 elections with what is unaccomplished as part of your policy and strategy. You will make progress. You may be able to hold back the House. That's the advice that has to be given to this, what I call Looney Tune Democrats, especially the progressive wing. They think that they can chew everything and so swallow as much what is left possible into your system. So this is not the most appropriate way to do it. So what do I think is the number? I don't know. I think that this could be 1.5, this could be 2, but it's not going to be 3.5 trillion. Already there are barbs going on between Manchin and Mr. Sanders, so it doesn't look very good. And this is not just Kirsten, and you may see more than Kirsten and Christian, sorry, not Kirsten, Christian and Christian Sinema and Mr. Manchin and other central Democrats joining the game.
Absolutely. And viewers, you will know that whenever Professor RB and I used to discuss American politics, he has always said that the central section, that is the Republican Democrats and the Democratic Republicans, these are the people who run the country, and that's what makes US what it is. Unfortunately, the progressives are trying to divide this even amongst the Democrats. They're trying to pull them into one extreme, and that makes the process of reconciliation that much harder, which is why sometimes we come up with some strong observations. The idea is that the country needs to keep moving forward, and that's where someone frequently seems to lose the plot, and as someone frequently happens to be from this progressive group. Moving on, amnesty activists walk out of meeting with Biden's pro-amnesty deputies. Trouble brewing from law and polls that do not support open border policies. There you have it. It doesn't matter whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, an open border policy is not something that the average American citizen likes. They wanted regulated entry because that is a system that has worked for the past, what, 150, 160 years? Sridharji, your thoughts on when this madness is going to end, and then what are they going to do about all these people who are now spread liberally across the country?
Well, Biden's rating in the polls has dipped to 39%. It's probably one of the lowest that we have seen in the recent history by a Democratic president. And court after court is ruling against these mandates and the policies that is being enacted, especially around the border. Then you have policies which is tying amnesty to the financial bill as part of the reconciliation process, which everybody is opposing. So we have now gone from 8 million illegal aliens in the country, somewhere close to between 10 to 11 million illegal aliens and still counting. And then we have more refugees coming into the country. So the question, therefore, is, and many of these refugees coming in are not vetted and validated, and there's a sense of mad rush. So there is no easy solution to this because Trump came up with a policy which is called Stay in Mexico to at least stall the inflow and slow it. He achieved that objective, and the net inflow was reduced to very, very small number in his tenure of 4 years. But Biden has just kept this open. It may be too late before he can do anything at this stage. Where we are going to do and what we are going to do in terms of normalization remains $1 million question. So we may be lumped with this burden of dealing with this 11 million illegal. There is no way 11 million people are going to be sent back. They struggle to send back 10,000, Haitians out of 100 or 200,000 who came into the country. So therefore, sir, there is no solution. The solution is more chaos, and how they're going to be absorbed over a period of time, only Almighty knows.
Democratic representative from Michigan, Rashida Tlaib, speaks at Gaza East Palestine online event with an intent to stop Israel from receiving military assistance. If you remember, viewers, we had reported about how the Democrats had managed to vote down a 1 billion Iron Dome funding for Israel as part of a bill, and then the next day, within 24 hours, the House cutting across party lines. Of course, AOC cried. They voted for that. So there are lines, there are boundaries that you don't cross, and this is what is the progressives thing. They continuously keep trying to stretch this, and they seem to be in a reality distortion field. That's how I see it, Sridharji. Um, when are these constituents, the members who are suffering because of these progressives, going to wake up and smell the coffee, Sridharji?
I don't think so, sir. I don't think they're going to smell the coffee. I think they are on a very clear agenda, and that agenda is going to be pursued. So you have a very fascinating situation. This is a sitting member of the House from Detroit or Michigan, and she is participating in an online event broadcast into with part of the groups from Palestine and probably Gaza into that specific region where she's openly professing that the Gaza and Palestine should be treated as one, so that they have the power then to stall the process of even providing any defense assistance. The $1 billion deal that Sree is referring to is about the further expansion and providing support on the Iron Dome. Now, this is what she is talking about is broad military cooperation and assistance for the protection of the state of Israel. And she is fighting by combining these two. She says there is a mechanism that they can use to introduce to stall that in the House. It's quite outrageous that a US member of the House speaking about this to nation outside, reflecting that she's still carrying the stains of her old, what you call as the ethnic identity. We may see the same in, on Somalia. We may see something similar in Iran. We may see something similar in other types of matters based on what we are seeing. And same we may see on the left wing, policies and left wing support. We may even have support for some of these Venezuelan and Cuban presidents coming from United States. Unheard of, sir.
The crime ravaging many cities, which we have been reporting, now reaches university campuses. One person was killed and seven wounded in the second shooting at Grambling State University, Louisiana, in 4 days. Park City Mall in Lancaster, Pennsylvania was shut down after a shooting incident was reported on Sunday afternoon, and the mall will remain closed until Monday afternoon. Sitaji, now we used to see these things happen in three places, right? Minneapolis, Portland, and Seattle, some portions of these three cities. Now looks like this malaise is spreading to other cities and to heartland America.
Yeah, I think that we should also add Chicago to it. Chicago was another place. DC is another place. Now it is going. Now it is this bad flu or bad epidemic is spreading to the other. But even worse is it is now going into campuses. These random shootings, organized shootings, orchestrated shootings, and nobody knows. Nobody wants to tell who are these people and why they're doing it. And with the left-wing collaborative media widely at help as part of mainstream, what we are witnessing is more information suppression rather than information dissemination. That may be for right reasons, for security and not to create civil strife and those kinds of things. But this is not very good news that what we are witnessing right around. It doesn't mean there are no other crimes in other states or other cities and so on, but just it's a reflection of major incidents that's now beginning to creep across into the. That's what happens when you have, all types of people who have come into the country and who don't understand, how you kind of integrate into the society and basically resulting in these types of crimes. Unless and until they get to the bottom of it, and law enforcement is given a very strong and very powerful support. Just as we speak, that there is a news breaking out that the police unions have strongly condemned President Biden for his lack of support to the police force and what is required of them to ensure that there is law and order prevalent in the country.
Biden's Supreme Court commission examining court packing loses two conservative members. The final recommendations were that court expansion is not desirable, while one being supportive on restricting the term of justices. As far as I can remember, especially at SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, the term is for life. That is, until the justice is alive, they can be a judge. I think now there may be some term limits being proposed for that also from this commission. But they have lost all their conservative members, it appears. Then the validity of that, the gravitas, goes out the window, isn't it, Siddharji?
It is. It does. It does. Absolutely. You have. There are two things. One is court packing is not allowed. That is increasing the justices uh, without kind of constitutional amendments and so on. You can't, in the middle of a term, suddenly realize you got to add from 7 to 15. So they appointed a commission to justify it. The second is that whether restricting the term can pave a way. Now, at least the conservative Republicans who were there were attempting to say you can kind of increase, but you at least can contemplate whether a term reduction is feasible. But Biden has ruled out very clearly that there is no term reduction, but he's more focused on court packing. So it looks like this could become another bipartisan, some kind of a reconciliation process if they have the way. But if they see the electoral polls, swinging the opposite way, this may be shelved rather than completely dropped.
And let's now take a look at India news. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who is on a week-long trip to the United States after attending World Bank and IMF board meetings, met with US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. In her meetings with Yellen, the focus was on firm recovery policy backed by fiscal programs and integrated monetary policy. Money laundering and combating terror funding were the other areas of focus. And at this point of time, I would like to pitch my other book to know more about money laundering. Who Painted My Money White? I hope Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman read that book. Sridharji, your thoughts?
My thoughts are on your book first. Please watch the program chaired by Abhijit Iyer and Suhail Seth with Sree IRG. You'll get glimpse of two books in one show. So that's my first observation. My second observation is that I think the meeting with Janet Yellen was I think the two women who know what they're talking about, and so they say they had a pretty good meeting. As is the case, that don't lift the pedal too soon, don't lift your leg off the pedal too soon, which is namely the withdrawing of the programs, especially the fiscal programs, and they were concerned about the Fed, tapering of the $120 billion asset purchase program. I think the second thing is that the monetary policy. The monetary policy, both countries have, at least India seems to have come a bit late, but the monetary policy of preserving the low rates has helped a number of companies to augment the cost side of the ledger, and basically they're saying they need to continue to persist. At least India, the Indian central bank governor was also at some of those meetings, and he seems to have kept the interest rates low, so which has helped that policy. I think the other two topics is particularly around the money laundering and terrorists. Both topics are close to heart of both these leaders, or the Treasury Secretary and the Finance Minister. They seem to have had a pretty good meeting. I think India also supports this global minimum tax, 15%, and that's something again which Janet Yellen led the world, and there's general consensus. So I think on the fiscal monetary side, I think both of them seem to have had a very good meeting.
And Finance Minister, while in Boston and in New York, met with a number of CEOs and business leaders. And while she was in Boston, she addressed Harvard Kennedy School students and faculty, and also met business leaders and investors. In New York, she has met with MasterCard, IBM, Citibank, FedEx executives from promoting various Indian developmental efforts. So a lot of stuff has been done. We have to wait and see whether these seeds sprout into fruit-bearing trees. And External Affairs Minister Jaishankar meets Indian Jewish community, hails their manifold contribution to Indo-Israel ties. Remember that Dr. Jaishankar is in Israel currently, and he will be meeting with the Israeli Chamber of Commerce and Innovation ecosystem leadership, and commends their enthusiasm for more partnerships with India. Dr. Jaishankar is also expected to meet with Israeli Prime Minister and other members of the cabinet. Sridharji, your friend Naftali Bennett is going to see your friend Dr. Subramanian Jaishankar, sir.
I think it certainly is an interesting meeting that one can anticipate Mr. Bennett to be meeting with Mr. Jaishankar. I don't know whether they have had past interactions, including Mr. Modi. Very much, Naftali was domestic, and very strong on the defense and very strong on the home policy. I know he's had a number of interactions with the U.S. policymakers, but I just don't know whether he's had much interactions with the Indian leadership. So it's an interesting meeting that would happen. There's no better person than Naftali himself. Naftali is a very, very smart and scientific-oriented, innovative leader. He himself has led a few innovation agendas. And he's also very strong on the defense front. So he's very clear and very precise on the defense front. So I feel that the meetings would go well. And I also feel that he's also a believer in India. And generally the Israeli business community, yes. If there's one relationship we can say that is entrenched and cast in stone, it's only for the India to harness, that is the India-Israel relationship. There's lots of cultural, country, geopolitical, lots of things India and Israel have shared interests and shared challenges.
And Piyush Goyal, who is leading the free trade agreement efforts, has indicated that discussions are on with three more nations over and above United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, EU, and Australia. He has thus far held meetings with 15 nations on this topic. We'll give you updates as and when more trade deals materialize. Sri Lanka has requested a $500 million worth loan from India for fuel purchases as its own reserves are dwindling. It appears that India seems to have said yes, that they can do this. Sridharji, do you have any updates on this?
Which one? Not which
Sri Lanka's
deal is
500
done. Yeah. I think Sri Lankan deal is done. India is going to support the 500 million. They're not going to let them down. The country is in deep situation on the finances. I think they're going to support them.
And satellite imagery from October 21st shows, that is, I don't know which date it is, that PLA Air Force has deployed UAV and fighter jets at its Gari Gunsa Air Base, which is 200 kilometers away from Pangong Lake, not far from the line of actual control. Sridharji, we've been telling about this, that China is building up its air force, they're building up new airstrips, and there was a certain amount of gap between the Indian Air Force and the Chinese Air Force, and they are making it appear that they have caught up. Your thoughts on this? Do you think that India still enjoys a superiority in Air Force over China, or do you think now it is almost on par?
Well, I think the general observation, speaking with the experts in this topic, is India knows the terrain. India knows how to fight in the Himalayan mountains. It's not the equipment, it is not the arsenal. It is knowing how to battle in this terrain, knowing the conditions and knowing the complexities and the more roughness and toughness of the terrain. So therefore, I think it is in this context, India is still holding sway. India didn't have the capabilities. Now they have augmented the capabilities in terms of doing it. But as one expert pointed out, it's the 3,600 kilometers boundary. So slowly, infrastructure and gaps are being closed out by India, because these guys can come from any stretch to any stretch. They can come from Ladakh, they can come from Arunachal, they can come from any other part of that 3,600 kilometers border. Now, with regard to this base, this used to be a commercial air base used in the Tibetan region, and now they have augmented it with military capabilities situated somewhere between 12,000 to 14,000 feet above in the high mountains. So I think India is watching and witnessing and taking a note, and you will see that India has also augmented and created a separate squadron, which is to deal with these types of scenarios.
Absolutely, and it also is working on augmenting its fleet in the Indian Ocean. It has got an 11th submarine, a hunting P-81 aircraft from Boeing. So a lot of things going on. India is preparing for war, and it is something that is being thrust on it. But be that as it may, our big country needs to do this thing. In market news, US stock futures were little changed during early morning trading on Monday after the major indices posted their best week in months. Major corporations are expected to report earnings this week, and as normally October is a month when the stock market actually has a pullback, and we have to wait and see if that's going to happen this month or not. But Sridharji, as always, he's the oracle. He can weigh in on how he sees the markets going. Sridharji, up to you, sir.
October first week kicked off with probably the best week in months, in the recent months, in terms of the uptick in the indexes. Driven by, very surprised, but very positive earnings from all the banks which reported earnings. The general sentiment is that we are going to see the same trend continue. The retail sales for September was up by about 0.7%. People expected a slump, but they did not see the slump reflecting the consumer sentiments. We have been saying this all the time, notwithstanding the fact in markets we cover in small segment, that there is close to $2 trillion of money that needs to flow into the system, and it will flow into the system in some fashion or the other in this specific quarter, reflecting the strong sentiments of the consumer. I think that notwithstanding the facts, the rates being climbing up, people have been very careful. There has been a little bit of slowing down in the house sales. That means that people are beginning to keep the money. But remember, the next stimulus has not come. We expect the third quarter earnings, consistent with all other things, to be very positive, and we may see a reversal into the contrary in the October market. We may not see significant rises, but it's not going to go down either. We will finish the year, as we have said before, on strong. We are already up in all three indexes by a long stretch. Even if we hold position and not lose much, it would be a stellar year for 2021.
And with that, our today's webcast comes to an end. Do like, subscribe, and join our membership program. And Sridharji, as always, looking forward to tomorrow's program. We'll be back here, same time, same place. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. I think it went for a bit of a time today, 45, 50 minutes with so
So
many
much to
topics
cover, sir. Yeah.
to cover. Thank you so much. And again, reaffirm, please continue to support PGurus, continue to support Daily Global Insight so we can continue to be supportive of bringing about, various activities shaping the globe.
Absolutely. I mean, you can see that the finance minister's trip has not been covered by India's MSM at all, which is shocking. This is so much happening in United States, and Indian MSM is not even bothered. So that tells you that you need a source like PGurus to tell you what is really happening, what really matters to you and your life. That's what we strive to do. Thanks once again. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar. Have a good evening and have a good day in United States as you kick off the Monday.